Yesterday, I made a video talking about an important issue. Young men ain't getting laid. Now, you may say, that's not a very important issue, Tim. But it's not just this one particular issue. It's why it's happening and what's happening around young men. And I received a lot of people emailing me saying the video I made kind of spoke to them and it kind of exemplified a lot of the issues that are happening right now. The Mary Sue, the ever so infamous Mary Sue, Dan Van Winkle, for some reason thought it would be funny to rag on men who are failing, I guess. Which is weird, especially when you consider that over on a social justice themed subreddit, Gamer Ghazi, they're actually defending young men. Because the issue is, as much as we often like to take the worst examples of anti or pro SJW, I think ultimately what we could all learn from is that they're kind of good intentioned people who aren't mean. I'm not saying they're all perfect. I think some of the ideas held by many people who are associated with the regressive left they're mean, they're bad people. But I do think social justice is a good thing. I just think the ideas being spread by these groups are really dangerous, and we'll get into that in a second. We'll read one of the comments, which is well-intentioned but dangerous and kind of oof. But here's the thing. This article says, unintentionally hilarious chart shows young men having way less, getting laid way less. Women, not so much. Okay, let's just read it. Today, the Washington Post shared an article entitled "The Share of Americans Not Getting Laid Has Reached a Record High," analyzing the many different reasons why Americans have been feeling less attractive than usual lately. However, the part that caught our eye was one of the charts that the author of the article, Christopher Ingram, shared on Twitter and the collective reaction to it. As you can see above, the chart details that men between the ages of 18 and 30 are having a lot less lovemaking sessions than those in that age range years before, in a steep decline that's been going on for about 10 years. I'm sure that's interesting for all kinds of reasons that Ingram explains in his article, but there's one particular detail about the chart that jumped out at us that may have some deeper meaning to it. Women aren't having nearly the same problem. Why? The people, the men anyway, asked why. The article offers a few suggestions for why men are having such a problem while women aren't, including that a higher percentage of men in that age range live with their parents, and that labor force participation among men has fallen, which generally correlates with less stable relationships. That's all very good and insightful and data-driven, but something literally isn't adding up. Lovemaking, the kind the article is talking about, that is, takes at least two people. Somehow, amid all the theorizing, never once does the subject even come up of who the women are hooking up with instead. Okay. Now, I think they may point this out, although the story's about to end. A very small group of, women with multiple partners. So, let's say you have 100 guys, you have 10 of them hooking up with much, much more of the women, so that leaves a bunch of men not hooking up. It's actually a lot worse than that, and it actually falls into some areas they should be talking about, areas of social justice. But see, here's the thing. This is the criticism I have. This idea of the social justice warrior regressive left is this. Unintentionally hilarious. What's funny about rampant unemployment, college dropouts, and men who are not participating in the labor force and living at home? Nothing's funny about that. That's a crisis for our civilization. We can't have a massive demographic being left behind with no means of collecting resources and just not participating. It's actually really scary this is happening. Look, I understand the getting laid part is peripheral and it's, a lot of people are going to find it silly because the subject matter is considered silly to people. But this is part of a much bigger trend, and I've got stuff pulled up we'll get to. But let's finish this article. We're no experts, but the answer to that question may just explain the men's problem. Women just don't want to hook up with them. Yes. Whether it's because the small number of not terrible men are skewing things by having a disproportionate amount of lovemaking, or more women are hooking up with each other instead. That's absurd. Or more likely both, for most of the men out there, she's just not that into you. Even if the answer is that they're just hooking up with men out of their age range, that's not a great commentary on men ages 18 to 30. Yes, it's a problem, nothing to make fun of people for. But guess what? The social justice progressives over on the Gamer Ghazi subreddit are very critical of this, and I agree with them to a certain degree. And I think you can actually see there's good intentions here. So, in not unrelated news, Ingram also tweeted that he did ask a source whether there could be a Me Too effect in play, but the verdict was that No lovemaking trend predates that, as though the movement itself isn't a result of years of men being terrible and women getting progressively more fed up. Here's the thing. Social justice. Good thing. Unfortunately, Dan Van Winkle and the Mary Sue are just virtue signaling. They don't actually believe what they're saying. Jim Jeffries is a really good example of what these people are doing. They pretend to be woke to signal to the worst of the worst to get clicks. Well, when we jump over to the Gamer Ghazi subreddit, these are people who they call themselves SJWs on their own page. They, gazelles, I guess. And they're like, I don't know a whole lot about it because it's like Gamergate related stuff. But I think they're kind of like the antithesis of the Gamergate people. So they're like the other side, the social justice side. So first, someone brings up, I think the real reason for this gap is a mixture of a very predatory culture in certain male circles coinciding with the rise of hikikomori. These are young men who are facing a stressful economic climate, can't move out, live at home, and they just kind of disappear. They lock themselves in their room and play video games. These are bad things. So this person says, they say that they're on the spectrum, and comparatively late loss of virginity was a huge source of stress and depression for a long time. The vast majority of these men are not lacking in sex just because they're horrible misogynists. There are a lot of socio-cultural factors at play here, and they're problems that hurt everyone. I read these comments and I was like, wow. Like, you know, so there's more. It's not good to celebrate other people having a tough life. Bravo. Spot on. Ronald Reagan. Traditional gender roles are likely a big contributor to why men are hooking up less. Young women weren't expected to have moved out as early, so although more millennials are stuck with their parents, it's not as socially frowned upon for women. Think about what happens. You have a guy who's 25 and a woman who's 25. They both live at home. The guy is not attractive because he's not established. These are socioeconomic and cultural factors that are hurting young men, and what's likely happening, if you were to ask me, we can see the age bracket of 30 to 39 in this chart shows that that men 30 to 39 are hooking up more. I would be willing to make the assumption, I think it's fair, that these younger women are hooking up with older guys who have careers, who have moved out, and these younger guys are suffering because of it. And here we go. This is fantastic. I loved this comment. What's hilarious about this? Poverty, clearly. Spot on. Bravo. Why? I really, really appreciate it when you can see some sane people who advocate for, you know, social justice and good causes and stuff. Now, here's where this one is just, it's well-intentioned, and I think I can respect kind of the idea they have, but they said, society already assumes the potential of white boys, so a lot of them grew up simply sitting in front of a computer, not building themselves up or making friends or working on social skills. Okay, there's your racism. All right, I understand it's well-intentioned. They're not being mean. They're actually trying to be empathetic, and I can respect that. But it's wrong. It's wrong. Society doesn't just snap their finger and assume white dudes don't struggle. In fact, it doesn't matter if you're a white dude or not. So suicide is way higher. Unemployment, college dropouts, all of these really bad things are high, regardless of whether you're white or not. And because of these white privilege racists, they genuinely, you know, they're going in the right direction with it. But they got the wrong idea with race, because you're going to find that, if you want to, here's what's crazy. If you want to assume white privilege and then use that to claim no one is teaching them how to develop social skills because they assume they're already good, what do you think's going on with, like, Black and Latino households and Asian households? Like, do you think that they're, like, are you claiming that because they're less privileged, people think they have to give them things? Are you arguing that affirmative action is what's, like, this idea, it's hurting white men? It's kind of a weird position. But look, I don't want to ramble too much about the Gamer Ghazi stuff, but I think I want to point out, because I think these comments, this one right here, what's hilarious about this? Absolutely, what is hilarious? It's not funny at all. People are having a hard time. They're depressed. They're suffering. You want to make fun of the worst, I get it, but that's not the solution to this problem. Poverty, clearly. I really, really love seeing people who are far left and regressive, whatever you want to call it, and they're understanding why this is insane to say. I have a couple other things I want to pull up just to exemplify. We've known about an epidemic of young men dropping out of college for years. It's been going on for a long time. Women are the dominant gender in college. So men are the underprivileged minority. Shouldn't we have programs to help men? But it gets worse. The millennial men are leaving a perplexing hole in the hot U.S. job market. This is a serious problem. What do you think is going to happen when the men who are 18 to 29 today are in their 30s, and that's the generation that we're expecting to take over industry? They're not going to be there. They're going to be inexperienced. They're going to be depressed, and the suicide rate is higher for men than it is for women for various reasons. Women try more often than men, but men are more. I don't know what the right word is without being insensitive, but men are more likely to affect to end their lives effectively. I'm greatly concerned by these issues, and I think one of the biggest problems that we have is the Mary Sue. No, not specifically. I mean what they're doing. Unintentionally hilarious. What do you think that does to a desperate and depressed young man when he sees you laughing at their suffering over things they can't control? Why is that good? It's not good. This is not social justice. And this is the kind of rhetoric that dominates social justice. To go back to the Jim Jeffries thing. Here's a guy, a comedian, if you're not familiar, he was recently, this guy, Avi Yemeni, secretly recorded him. And we find out this guy who makes a Comedy Central show where he claims to oppose Islamophobia turns out to say some of the most egregious and offensive things you've ever heard. The point is, Jim Jeffries doesn't actually believe any of this. He's lying. He's virtue signaling. And there are people on the left, because of tribalism, who are like, oh, that's nonsense. And admittedly, there are people on the anti-SJW side who will claim everything as a virtue signal, and then you'll get these dichotomies and this tribalism. I appreciate Gamergazi can point out why this is wrong. But Jim Jeffries is another example of the corporate wokeness where they pretend to care. And look at Ghostbusters 2016. Look at The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi less so, but typically you see these movies try to be woke at the expense of others. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to prove how woke they are and get the clicks at the expense of others, laughing at the misery of others. I assure you, this will do one thing, and maybe they want this. When young, depressed men see this, they're going to go, screw you. I hate you. You're the problem. That's not what we want. We want people to come together and find common ground. We know they disagree. That's unfortunate, but we can live together. We can figure this out. I think we need to seriously focus on this kind of problem. It's mind-blowing to me. I mentioned it in my other video that someone like Jordan Peterson comes along, and the Gamergazi people even mention this, that Jordan Peterson is trying to teach 10 years of adulthood to young men in a very short amount of time. And what does the media do? They want to signal their wokeness, so they do the same thing, and they call Jordan Peterson alt-right, a white supremacist. They banned his book in New Zealand. Here's a guy who I think Jordan Peterson has said a lot of kooky things. Some people have asked, he said something like art can't exist without religion. I think that's silly. He said things. But here's the thing. Jordan Peterson acknowledged these things, these criticisms, and that's another reason why I respect him. When he did an interview, I think it was with Jim Jeffries, he was asked if he thought businesses should be forced to make, say, a gay wedding cake. And he said, no, just go find a new baker. Then Jim Jeffries said, what about the Civil Rights Act when they had to allow black people to go to restaurants? And Jordan Peterson said, no, that was a good thing. Maybe I was wrong about that. And it's because Jordan Peterson is a good faith actor. I think he's not perfect. I think he's ripe for criticism, but I think he does represent something really important for depressed young men, and that's why he's so popular. What does the media do? To signal their wokeness, to attack these men, to laugh at their misery. They will do everything in their power to get Jordan Peterson banned. I'm not saying he's the end-all be-all. I just have respect for him because I think he's doing something really important for young people who are depressed. I've been there. Not this specifically. I've been homeless, young dude, couldn't find work, was just ignored, insulted. People claimed I had everything in the world, and I didn't. And I had to, essentially crawl my way out and figure things out and solve my problems. I hope that other guys can do it too, and this is certainly not the way you get things done. This is how you make enemies, and this is how you make people go crazy. You mock them and belittle them and berate them when they're desperate already. I'm going to stop there. Stick around. I got another video coming up at 4 p.m. on my main channel, youtube.com/timcast. Yes, it's a different channel. I will see you there.